may start now.
Okay, so welcome back to the Nextv series for Europe and the CEE. My name is Philip O'Connor, and we're on day 2 of a jam-packed agenda where we've gathered some of the best and brightest speakers in the industry to share their knowledge and expertise with you. Our next guest is one of the most knowledgeable and experienced people that I've come across, and over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to be asking him to demystify the challenges around the subject of Android migration and rollout. Remember that you can ask questions using the chat function, and they'll be passed on to us, and in turn then I'll pass them on to my guest. So please do get involved if you can. We'll either answer them during the course of the conversation, or we'll roll them all together at the end. Gary Hamer, Senior Vice President of Sales and Business Development at SmartLabs. How are you this morning?
I'm very well. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending day 2 of the event. Yesterday was really excellent, so very proud to be part of it. Strange to be sitting in my office at home and not sat there in Berlin as we normally do, but it's, yeah, welcome everybody.
Yeah, it is one of those situations. I'm sure many people will be aware they'll be in the same situation that you are, but it's a great opportunity for us to still bring everybody together. And I think there's been, not only has there been great sales of set-top boxes and Android products recently, but also of webcams and microphones. Gary, let's get down to it, because when we spoke before we put this whole sort of program together, you and I were having a conversation about this. Could you just explain to me a little bit about SmartLabs and about your history in the business? Because this is not your first rodeo. You've been around for a long time in this business, right?
Thanks for that. That makes me sound very old. But yeah, this is my 16th year in IPTV. So starting off way back when delivery of video over IP was just a figment of people's imaginations or a technical dream. Now it's such a deep part of everybody's life. It's just television and it's just what we do. But it's really been a journey over the last 17 years. So yeah, I suppose I'm in that veteran category now with grey hair and glasses. SmartLabs, we're a market-leading solution vendor for multi-screen, multi-network solutions. And we also design set-top boxes. But we pride ourselves with our consulting approach to sales. The market is very complex. And things we've heard about over the last day or so really reiterate how complex the market is, how fractured, and how we're all going through this transition of viewing habits, and we're trying to keep the technology moving with it. And SmartLabs is playing a key role in working with operators and service providers in making that transition to whether it's Android TV or IPTV 2.0, the delivery of content to an operator, to a telco's customers, and whatever form that may take. And today we're going to be talking about Android and Android TV, but there are other options as well, which we'll probably touch on as we go through the session.
In that complex market that you're talking about there, Gary, what is the appeal of Android TV in particular for operators?
Sure. I think we're moving into this app market, or this environment where users and customers have access to content, whether that be from premium service providers, or those names that we shall not mention, through to the most local of content or niche sports. There's such a huge amount of content out there. And Android TV, or Android, allows an operator to bring some of those applications into an environment which allows them to deliver that to their end customer, or deliver that content to their end customer. The complexity is that we see Android and Android TV as a set-top box solution, and most of our operators are moving into a multi-screen environment. So the set-top box, and this Android TV buzzword and big conversation of the moment, is only part of a very complex environment of smart televisions. We heard some really good comment yesterday about how people are seeing smart TVs growing and the growth of that usage. We all know how we're using our mobile applications. So the operators are trying to bring the content into an entire multi-screen offering. And Android TV and Android is one way of bringing those applications and that content to an end customer. And Android is sort of this app world, which people have this vision of, well, that's how I want to do it, because that's how it is on my mobile phone. That's how I'm used to do it, used to doing it. But it does bring up its own challenges that we can come across later on.
What's the reality of that then? If I own content, if I own a niche sport and I want to get it out there and I want to broadcast it, I want it to be seen on cell phones, I want it to be seen on tablets, I want it to be seen on my smart TV at home, I want to have a little set-top box that I can take to my little house in the country. How do I do that? How do I come to SmartLabs and say, okay, here's my feed, can you put this onto Android for me? What are the steps around that for somebody who wants to deliver that content?
You can create your own application and put that app just as anyone else, as the BBC do and other content providers and the SVOD and TVOD providers. They put those applications in the app stores and allow the end customers in the retail market to choose those applications. The complexity comes when an operator wants to deliver that type of service, and that's where SmartLabs comes in. Android and the Android ecosystem is available in many retail devices. So I certainly have devices here, sticks, my Sony smart TVs are all running in this Android environment. And I know as an end user, I can download these applications. I can download Netflix and Amazon Prime and all of this high premium content. I can subscribe to those services. But that's got nothing to do with an operator. So the operators are trying to bring these services into the operator space. And that's where the operator tier environments come in. So a content provider can offer content to a retail environment very easily. But for an operator to start delivering that content within their environment, so you're bringing it onto their set-top box device, then there are individual contracts that are required and individual negotiations that are required to bring those applications into their telco offering, and that's where the complexity comes. And it's SmartLabs is in a great position to help with those discussions and to help bring those applications together. But it's a very different market between the retail space and the operator space. And that's a complexity that I and my team spend a lot of time discussing with operators, that it's not the same environment. The fact that I can go to my supermarket and buy a device with all of these applications available doesn't mean that me as an operator can offer those same applications and that same content within my operator environment. And that's a sort of a sticking point that needs to be negotiated and traversed by operators that want to launch these applications and give access to this content.
So in a way, SmartLabs can help the operators and the content creators and the content distributors come together. You can help sort of package these things and do these deals that you're talking about with the operators. Is that correct?
Well, we tend to leave the content discussions to the operators, because it's at the end of the day, that content is just content. In the old days, it used to be linear channels and VOD. Now, access to these SVOD platforms or TVOD platforms, they have to be negotiated in the same way, with the same legal wrappers, with the same commercial terms around revenue shares and things. And we can make those introductions, we can support and discuss, but most of these operators will have their own content teams that will be responsible for bringing in that content into their service. We can work more on the solution side, bringing that content, once those deals are done, bringing those content or those linear streams into an operator's service and presenting them to the end customer on whichever device the operator chooses.
There's always risks. I mean, you mentioned a few names of a few of the bigger players in the content space there, but there's always risks and limitations attached to when you get involved in a specific ecosystems. I suppose the two big ones are probably Apple TV and Android at the moment. Is there a risk for companies getting involved that they become too dependent on Google?
That's sort of a very sideways question. Yes, there are. Google, if we remember back a few years, Google actually launched their Google TV platform, and that then morphed into what we now know as Android TV. So initially Google was going to present an a la carte service with linear channels and content. They then stepped back and created a platform, and that's what we now know as Android TV in the retail space, or Android TV operator tier in the operator space. There has been discussion, and I've been on a couple of panels where there has been the suggestion that Google could step back in and offer a new service under their own branding, with their own portfolio of channels and content that would possibly compete with the operators and telcos that are currently committing to this sort of roadmap. So I think there are real risks that I think operators need to be aware of. Apple, the previous speaker from one of our competitors was talking about Apple TV and the fact that when an operator puts their application on an Apple TV device, it's part of the existing Apple TV environment. So all of the Apple TV applications, all of the, the other applications. So it's not an operator environment in the Apple space as we perhaps traditionally know it, as in a fully branded UI with complete control over customization and what content's available. You're part of a wider ecosystem, and that can be a challenge for the telcos and the operators, because traditionally a service provider or a telco has always had absolute control over UI design, over the content that appears on their platform. One specific point with Android TV, an Android TV operator tier, an operator is obliged to present the entire Google Play Store within their platform. And that will include applications from an operator's competitor and from out-of-town competitors and from other sources. That's quite a challenge for many operators, but that's a straightforward obligation as using Android TV. And again, we have to explain that to the operators, and we're well versed in that conversation, but it is a reality. That's a mandatory requirement. You have to offer unfettered access to the App Store. So to go back to your question, can people overcommit? I think we're in a real period of transition, and I think it's for the larger operators, Android TV is a very obvious and logical route to market. But I think there are risks that need to be understood, and conversations need to be had. And Google do not say they will not launch a new service. They are non-committal. They may or they may not. Apple the same. We know that Netflix in France at the moment are launching linear channels. Now, will Netflix create a region-specific portfolio of linear channels to directly compete with our traditional service providers? Maybe. So there was a point that was made yesterday about one of the biggest risks in the market going forward, about what the bigger operators, the Apples, the Netflix, the Amazons, what they decide to do in the future. And I would agree with that point that was made yesterday. I think it's a very real consideration as to how the market, we've seen Disney Plus, being launched, who would have, they're 120 million subscribers in 9 months. It's madness. That growth is something that people dream of. So that's going to give them real confidence to do other things and to try and develop the market in that way. So can an operator overcommit to these platforms? Potentially. But I think the end goal is about keeping their end customers happy. And that's where the content comes in, and bringing those content offerings together. So I think as long as it's a managed risk, then it's a risk worth taking.
One way to keep people happy is, of course, to offer features and functionality that they find useful. In this Android ecosystem, is it possible to offer things like recommendation? Can I sit on my sofa at home and can I use voice control rather than using remote controls? Are these things that operators are going to need to have in set-top boxes or in other machines that we're going to use to watch these things in the future?
Sure. Voice control is certainly a growing feature. It's, I think, becoming more important, and we're seeing more operators requesting it and exploring how it works. With Android TV operator tier, it's a mandatory part of that offering, and you can use Google's voice search. But with the other Android options, such as AOSP, you can create your own features and functions with perhaps more flexibility. With recommendation, there was a perfect comment made yesterday with regard to the recommendation applications and how poor they perform, and actually people much prefer curated, or people are seeing better results from curated recommendation rather than AI recommendation. So people much prefer to watch what their friends and colleagues at work perhaps are talking about, rather than what the machine thinks I would want to watch because it's 2 in the afternoon on a Saturday. So recommendation and those sort of features and functions. The user interface itself, I think, is a key point of differentiation. I would say in the last year, we've seen much more discussion of user interface features and look and feel within the operator space. And I think that's being driven by the innovation that we're seeing on the OTT platforms, the types of performance and the types of look and feel that you're seeing, on the Netflix UI and on the Amazon Prime UI. Operators are seeing that, and they want to be able to do similar things or to modify things slightly. So the OTT platforms are certainly leading that discussion around how the user interface looks, and I think differentiation in that UI is a really key area, and we're seeing lots of discussions around how that can work. But functionality is a key differentiator, I think, and as the amount of content on these platforms grows, the ability to search and the ability to find what you're looking for is really key. So a meaningful search engine that searches throughout your entire offering, I think, would be a key differentiator for operators.
When we speak of the technology itself, and I'm conscious of the fact that the time is flying and I've only really begun to sort of unpack this with you, Gary, but just one of the questions before we go that I'd like to ask you, you've been around for, as you say, 17 years in this business, and you've seen an awful lot of changes. Are set-top boxes about to become redundant? Do you see anything in 4 or 5 years where we won't actually have them anymore?
I change my mind on this all the time. I think the answer is no. I think set-top boxes have morphed and have changed over the last, since I started. I was selling set-top boxes initially that were the size of a laptop or size of a PC, and we're now down to things that will fit in your pocket. I think we're seeing set-top boxes move into the retail environment, so there's more operators taking the bring your own device space. So maybe operators controlling and purchasing set-top boxes may become a thing of the past. I think operators over the last few years, certainly our customers, have become much more confident in delivering content to smart TVs and to mobile devices, and using SmartLabs products to understand the quality of what's being delivered, and gaining trust in those end devices like smart TVs or mobile phones that they don't control. I think that's giving them confidence that actually retail devices of a known specification could allow them to deliver a high quality service to a device that is bought in the retail market, rather than one that they have to supply with their brand. So I think we may start to see changes in the set-top box business model in that it's more a customer buys a set-top box and then an operator delivers their service onto it. I think set-top boxes as a generic device, I think they're going to be around for a long time.
And just one final question, and very briefly, if you could, please. Android has a kind of a dominant position now. Do you expect anybody to threaten that in Europe and CEE in the coming years?
I think at the moment, we've launched 7 Android AOSP services, 5 of those in the last year. We've got 5 operators using Android smart TVs, and we're working with one of our biggest customers in CEE, migrating from a Linux environment to the Android TV operator tier. So it is certainly leading and driving the development within SmartLabs and our customer base. I really don't see something coming up on the side. I think unless Google decide to launch a service to compete, or something new comes through the ether, I don't see it changing. We still see developments with Linux. We still have a lot of customers working in the traditional Linux environment. We still hear discussions now and then of RDK and whether that's going to make a reappearance in Europe, and will that grow and become more generally available. But I think at the moment, Android is certainly the business that we're doing is being led by Android today. So I think we're going to see that for the next couple of years.
And no matter what happens in the industry in the future, Gary, the one thing I do know is that if anything does happen, you'll be the first man I contact to tell me about it, because this has been a fascinating 20 minutes. For those who are deeply involved in the business, they will have gotten some great value out of that, what you said. And for people like me who maybe don't know as much about it, it has been absolutely fascinating to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed, Gary Hamer, Senior Vice President of Sales and Business Development there at SmartLabs. There'll now be a break of about 20 minutes, and we'll be back at the top of the hour for a discussion around addressable advertising opportunities in pay TV. And don't forget that you can reach out to Gary and everyone else taking part using the networking functions provided by Nextv around this whole seminar, these 3 days of webinars. So we'll see you again at 12 o'clock, and I'll be back a little bit later in the afternoon.